Due to some unforeseen circumstances, we missed out on presenting the Realme 8 model, but we will surely try to make it up by showcasing the new Realme 8i. I don't know if the successor is the right word for this device, considering that they bear almost the same name, but their specs show many differences. But let's take a look and see what this phone brings to the table with a price tag of just shy below $200 US. Right off the bat, let's start with the screen size. Unlike the Realme 8 that packs 6.4-inch screen, the 8i comes equipped with a 6.6-inch screen that is also of a different type and a different refresh rate. Realme 8 came with 60Hz Super AMOLED display, while the Realme 8i comes with an IPS display that refreshes at 120Hz, something that is almost becoming a standard. And although I am a fan of AMOLED display myself, I would rather opt in for an IPS 120Hz combo than stick with 60Hz, even if it's AMOLED. However, this change means that the Realme 8i lacks the always-on display function. The image quality that this display offers can't be described as decent, but nothing more than that, given that we've seen way better IPS displays. As expected from a phone in this class, the screen comes with a 600 nit brightness and the standard Full HD Plus resolution. The selfie camera position will not be to everyone's liking, as Realme decided to place the camera module on the left-hand side of the screen. I still think that a centrally aligned selfie cameras are the best choice, but this is also something the user will quickly get used to. In terms of design, we didn't have high expectations, since there's usually nothing fancy about exterior of a phone in this price range. What you get is a fairly plain model with a plastic frame and back and a camera system that seems to be flavor of the day for 2021. Realme 8i isn't particularly a light phone, just 6 grams shy of 200, mainly thanks to the large 5000 mAh battery that is a standard in this price range. Color of the model we've tested is called Space Black, but it looks more like a dark gray with a metallic shimmer that depends on the angle at which the light hits the device. The power button with an integrated fingerprint sensor is located right where you expect it to be on the right-hand side, unless you're a lefty that is, with the volume keys are placed on the opposite side. Right above them, we also have a SIM tray with a dedicated microSD slot. We're used to seeing a secondary microphone located on top of the device, but that is not the case here, as there are 2 microphone holes at the bottom edge of the phone, right next to the Type-C port, a mono speaker grill, and a 3.5mm connector. It is a strange design choice to put 2 microphones just a millimeter apart, but let's just assume that they know what they did. The choice of chipset is also interesting, MediaTek Helio G96, and this is honestly the first time we are seeing a device with this chipset. We had the chance to see Helio G95 on several different models, and G96 is a successor for 2021, and is also made using a 12nm process. There is no notable difference between the two, as the core type, count, and speed are exactly the same, but thanks to certain optimizations, the G96 offers slightly better results in terms of processing power. Now, as for the GPU, the Mali G96 has been replaced by Mali G57 GPU, which runs 50 MHz lower clock speed and has 2 instead of 4 executable units. The result is a drop of around 10% in performance compared to its predecessor, the Helio 95. All in all, small gains in the CPU department, small losses in terms of graphics. The model we got for review is packing 4GB of RAM and only 64GB of storage, but keep in mind there is also a version with 128GB of storage available for just $20 extra. We've previously mentioned the phone is equipped with a 5000 mAh battery, and after 10 hours of YouTube playback with 50% of screen brightness, the battery went from 100 to 35%. And honestly, we expected a bit better results. Realme 8i comes with an 18-watt charger, and it will take 1 hour and 40 minutes to fully charge the device. And while we are talking about contents of the phone box, let's also mention that it comes with a silicone case. In terms of connectivity, Realme 8i comes with almost everything you would expect on a phone to have, excluding the NFC, which can be a deal breaker for some people that use it on a daily basis. In terms of its camera system, Realme 8i is a rather simple device, even though it may not appear that way at first glance. Even though design-wise it may look like it houses 4 camera lenses, One of the said lenses is actually a flash, while another one is an auxiliary black and white sensor, which leaves us with only a main camera and a 2 megapixel macro sensor, which may be useful to some, but for the majority of the users, this is practically a single camera phone. Now the good news is at least that it's a good one, as the main sensor is a 15 megapixel Samsung ISOCELL S5KJN1 with a f1.8 aperture, which is a breath of fresh air compared to the cheap 48, 64, and 108 megapixel sensors we usually see these days. The main camera uses a phase detection autofocus with a 26mm full-frame equivalent lens and offers a very solid performance, outperforming our expectations. The daytime photos capture a decent level of detail, more than some of the affordable 108 megapixel models we've seen lately, and it particularly impresses with the color reproduction that's tuned really well and gives the photo a natural and effective look. The dynamic range of the main camera is good, although not ideal because it's very contrasting since the darkest detail will sometimes be lost in the shadows. If you pay close attention, you will notice slight sharpening in the image, which we can't really complain about because it has been implemented just enough to not ruin the impression and for the photos to look clearer and better, especially on small screens and social networks. The camera app on the Realme 8i also offers 2x and 5x zoom, but of course the software is cropping part of the photo, so the results are in line with that. 2x will still be usable, but forget about the 5x from the get-go. Access to the macro camera is hidden among the additional modes in the form of the ultra macro option, and the camera itself is usable, but it will definitely not take your breath away. 2 megapixels and fixated focus mean capturing a sharp photo will require plenty of light and a ruler to get a distance right, so you don't expect too much in real use. Speaking of modes, we really have to commend the portrait mode on the main camera. It works quite nice. We did find some barely noticeable mistakes on the edges of the subject's hair, but overall the photos it produced look very good with pleasantly defocused background. The main camera actually copes the worst in low light conditions before night falls, when a high level of noise becomes noticeable. When it gets dark, the night mode takes over, and it does a pretty decent job. Although it's not the best night mode we've seen, which is not to be expected in this class, we can say that the night photos are quite good and that this mode prioritizes preserving detail over the complete elimination of noise, which gives the images a very interesting analog film-like flair that we liked. As long as you have a steady hand and do not use the zoom option at night, we believe that you will be satisfied with the Realme 8i's night shots. As for video recording, it is limited to Full HD and 30 frames per second, which limits the quality a lot, so the videos are decent, but nothing more than that. The video stabilization is usable in standard mode, but you also get the ultra steady mode, which further crops the image but offers a very decent stabilization. Now, I do have to mention that all of this goes for daytime recording, while the nighttime video recording performance falls off dramatically, with a lot of noise and very low amount of detail. So it will definitely do a trick when absolutely needed, but this phone wasn't really intended for that. And as we wrap up with the camera, we have to mention the front-facing 16 megapixel selfie camera with an f2.1 aperture, which didn't knock us off our feet. The picture detail is average with noticeable sharpening that spoils the impression a bit, and the colors are also a bit pale. Interestingly, it seems as if the camera actually manages better at night than during the day, when the selfies look what we would expect. And this is where we see that the Realme 8 and the Realme 8i do not belong in the same class. Realme 8 has a 64 megapixel sensor, but in our experience, that makes no difference, as we really liked what the new 50 megapixel sensor had to offer. But Realme 8 still has an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera and also has a gyroscopically stabilized 4K video. Realme 8 has the aforementioned AMOLED screen, faster 30-watt charging, so they're not likely to represent a competition to one another on the market. Now, as for the software, Realme 8i comes with an Android 11 and feels very lively in use, largely due to the Realme UI 2.0 user interface. This year, we didn't get the chance to test many phones in this price range, as only a few devices we got on our test fit the bill, but none of them really stood out. To simply put it, this is a phone aimed at not overly demanding users, those who just want a new phone with a larger screen and usable cameras, but don't plan on spending too much money on it. For a day-to-day use of an average user, this device is a completely legitimate choice, with an emphasis that will be rewarded with unusual beautiful photos in this price range. This is something that is becoming relevant to everyone when choosing a new phone, even for those few who say don't care about the cameras. For those kind of users, Realme 8i is definitely a good choice. Thank you for watching the Bench House review of the Realme 8i. My name is Marco, we are finally back, and we got a lot more devices to show on our channel, so stay tuned.